Good morning, dear friends. There is certain symbolism regarding what is happening on this stage. And symbolism is not only in the fact that there are two people with the name Pavlo here, and it's not also about the fact that we are both servicemen. But the point is that our brigades are neighbors. For example, my brigade is on the left side of Pavlo's brigade and vice versa. And we got acquainted just here. So Uzhgorod is like Nokia, it's connecting people. And I understand that we have just 20 minutes here, and we have counted that it will probably be three uh, key statements from each of us for 3 minutes, and it's a sort of like ping pong. And well, if we are discussing certain strategic things related to war, the first thing I want to tell you is the way we imagine victory. I will share my ideas. What is victory for us? And I will ask you. Well, this is definitely a very difficult question for all of us, and particularly for those who are in the army. But again, we are in the army for the third year running, and there is probably some deformation regarding the view of the victory. As the lieutenant, as the commander, I see victory as the military victory. Probably some people think it is not achievable, but I think that we should set much higher goals than those we are capable of achieving right now, because we have to be conscious of the fact that the appetite of our enemy is growing. And with every attack, they will pressure us more and more. And if we agree for less, we'll definitely lose more. So, in my opinion, first and foremost, we have to fight for Ukraine. For Ukraine, we know. I'm talking about internationally recognized borders of Ukraine. However unreal it may seem right now, however euphoric it may be at the end of 2022, and first of all, the deoccupation, restoration of the territorial integrity of Ukraine, including the Crimea, is our ambitious goal. And my step every day is a step towards this victory, whatever step I'm talking about. Whether I'm talking about destruction of the enemy or anything else, I think this is all about contribution to this big victory I'm talking about. Well, talking about many things being a serviceman is definitely a complicated task, because people in the rear usually generalize everything, and when a person in the uniform says something, the society usually is tempted to think all the military people are just the same because they are in the uniform and they have the same ideas and positions. And probably our talk with Pavlo is to some extent an illustration of this, but still we might have different ideas about certain things. Now we discuss our victory, and we discuss our victory for a long period of time, and I remember how the ideas in society have changed what will be considered a victory. I remember the first stage of the war, the Kiev operation, and at that time, victory for society was the borders of Ukraine as of the 23rd February 2022. And if at that time we had negotiations, probably it would be okay for society to agree with the borders of the 23rd of February 2024. But after Kharkiv counterattack, after liberation of Bucha, Irpin, Hostomel, etc., the appetite of Ukrainian society has been growing. And at that time, our understanding of victory was about the borders of 1991. So the society was not ready to agree with anything but this situation. So that was the only possible victorious scenario for us at that time. But it seems to me, and this is my personal opinion, for me, the victorious scenario is preservation of our sovereignty and statehood, and liberation of the occupied territories is a sort of a bonus. If we are capable of achieving it, it would be great. But the core element, the key element in the scenario of our victory is preservation of our sovereignty and statehood. One may have, for example, statehood, but one may not be sovereign, and we already have the picture of Belarus here. So we should also think about Ukraine. What and how Ukraine will look like after the war. And again, it depends what Ukrainian society is thinking about this scenario. For example, whether it equals victory or whether the end of the war equals defeat. And again, it influences the country we shall live in tomorrow. And I will explain the situation. If, for example, the scenario of the war ends with what the society considers as victory, will become just a typical European country. Victory always has many fathers. And under the umbrella of our victory, there will be place for everybody: the servicemen, the people in the rear, Ukrainian diaspora in different countries, our foreign partners. We all will be able to say that we all contributed to our victory, and the situation will be different if the war ends in a scenario considered by the society as a defeat, because in this case we'll start thinking who is to blame, who is the main guilty person in this defeat, and then we risk the situation that Ukraine becomes a country that will probably be similar like modern Turkey or modern Hungary, will be tempted to get a trauma or of Trianon or the trauma some other countries have. And in this case, all the future discussions in our country will be about two poles. On the one pole, there will be people for whom the main goal will be preservation of democracy. And on the opposite pole, there will be people for whom the main task will be preservation of our nation. And we know from experience of other countries that these two things are not necessarily equal. There are political forces that think that the key point is to preserve democracy, and their colleagues from other political forces think that democracy and principles are equal to destroying the nation, and they have to preserve the nation first and foremost. But even if we have this scenario, it is still better than the scenario where we argue where is our capital, in Moscow or in Kiev. And again, this scenario is much better than becoming a new Belarus, where we, for example, argue whether Ukrainian language should be the state language, or it will be enough for us to have just the Russian language as the language of communication. And it seems to me that this discussion is definitely even bigger and deeper that we may think, and the expectations of society will actually influence the situation, what is acceptable and what scenario is not acceptable. But this is not the only space of our discussion, and this is the space we are in, this is the space we observe. And For example, we observe the situation you have mentioned in your speech, in your welcoming speech. I'm talking about the arguments in society. And for example, today we have the 8th of November 2024, and if we start discussing the Ukrainian society and its aggregate state, so how would you describe this aggregate state of the Ukrainian society? This is a very complicated question considering the situation that I'm on the battlefield most of my time and I'm in the rear among society probably for about 20 years, 20 days a month, a year. And again, my vision will be closely related to my position as a military person who is on the combat field, whose main focus is to survive and to complete the military task with the minimum losses. And it becomes obvious when you come back to the civil audience, when you come back to the society, because your efforts and your mentality is aimed at one thing, and the mentality and the ideas of people I talk about in the rear is different. And I see it and I feel it. Well, we are just the same as the other people. Well, the armed forces of Ukraine is a small country within a big country, and there are such servicemen as I am who are optimistic about our military prospects just because we do not see any other choice. And well, I agree with Pavlo that the key point for us is preserving Ukrainian statehood. But I am a serviceman and I use some military tactics. So I would say, well, today they agree for these territorial concessions. It means 3 years after I will be more prepared and I will take more. This is what I'm saying. Appetite is growing while you are eating, and we should remember this. We should remember about the appetites of our enemy. And when we discuss society during the third year of war, the society should be honest. The society should understand whether it is ready to become unified, whether we are ready for the foreign people to become our people. This is something I've read. When somebody else's grief becomes your grief, and in this case, you become engaged. Ukraine is our big family we are fighting for. In this room, there are lots of my acquaintances who I know from my civil life before the war. But again, for the last 3 years, I've been talking mainly to people who are from the left bank of Ukraine. Well, it seems to me that well, our servicemen are definitely in different conditions than the conditions of the civilian people. And our soldiers are risking so many things and are living in such difficult conditions that actually they do not have any other choice but to become suspicious of everybody who is behind his back. And for example, Pavlo is in the infantry, and we know that the infantry soldiers are usually suspicious of all people standing behind their backs because these are people behind and they have already made certain decisions about the fate of this soldier. And I feel the same about myself when I observe certain processes happening in our society. We all notice that we do not see any lines to the territorial military commissions that actually encrypt people to the army. And people are trying to live with the war but do not go to the war. And still, there are some questions that are not answered for me. One, we say that the Ukrainian society is taking a test for unity, for social cohesion, test for the right for statehood, test for the right to have a political nation, test to have the sovereignty. Who are we compare ourselves to? When we say that our society undergoes some tests and some difficulties, and it depends on us how we pass this test. So, what is a good mark? What is an excellent mark regarding this test? What is an unsatisfactory mark regarding this test? Who else has taken this test and passed it better than us? Because when we compare Ukraine to Great Britain during the First or the Second World War, is not always correct, because, well, Britain during the Second World War was a totally different country than Great Britain we see today. It was a colonial empire. It was about soldiers from Australia and New Zealand who are fighting alongside the British soldiers. This was the more powerful country than even the modern Great Britain. So when we are talking about British society during the Second World War, this is a different society, and this is the society that actually face different choices. There is a very nice British TV series about the everyday life of a British police officer in 1940. So it was actually filmed 22 years ago. And the TV series is about everything our society faces today. These are people who are trying to avoid going to the army and giving bribes for this. We saw the British neo-fascists who say, well, Hitler will come and make order here. We see in different people the same level we can see in the Ukrainian news. And it seems to me that when we compare our experience to the experience of some other countries, and when we say that they faced challenges which are the same but managed to overcome them much better, this is like comparing ourselves to a son of our mom's friend. We know that this son of our mom's friend is good, is nice, is polite, is well brought up, but the key point is that probably he doesn't exist. So when we compare Ukraine to a conditional country, we should remember that this conditional country probably does not exist. And we see that, well, we do not have already any more time for our discussion, probably a couple of minutes more. Well, for how many months? It will be soon 20 months then the war is going on. What keeps you sane? This is also a very difficult question. I am in the infantry. I have been in the infantry from the very first day of the war, and now it is so much demonized in the society that people do not want to go to the infantry. Well, we actually tell the same things to our soldiers. Well, you have to dispel this myth. Everything depends on the infantry. Well, the edge, the first front line is the infantry line. But definitely, infantry is about very difficult moral and spiritual condition. And well, people really may get insane. And we really have to admit the truth that we have changed. We have become more cynical. We really have very high level of intolerance to many things. People become reserved. People have changed their responses to many different things and reactions to many different things. And again, that's normal because our experience is unique. You do not have this experience. The European people do not have this experience. My foreign comrade has said that the war gives you the highest level of responsibility and experience. And he said that he was in Syria, he was in many other hot points, and now he's in Ukraine. So what I am trying to do in order to keep sane in order to avoid becoming angry or aggressive is something people do all the time. And I'm talking about reading books. You have to understand that, yes, war is about certain things happening, but there is always time to open a book, to read nonfiction, to read some political books, to read some pieces of news about such events as our event, or to read a professional book. We understand that our time is limited. The war, which started in 2022, for me seems like a war of the previous century. And again, now the war has changed a lot, even in comparison with 2022. We see lots of technologies. What yesterday was new, today is typical, and tomorrow it will be outdated. And only those people who are ready to learn something new, who are ready to be flexible, will become victorious, will win. Not all those who have more human resources, but those people invested into intellectual development, your own development, development of your comrades and your nation. Well, I fully agree with you that the war is changing a lot. I remember that in 2022, the units who had Mavic drone were considered to be advanced. Those units who at the end of 2022 had FPV drones actually were reported by the journalists as the most advanced ones. And just 1 week ago, some people were transferred to some new units to fight Russian drones. And that means that the technology we used probably half a year ago will not be used tomorrow, because everything is dynamic, everything is changing very quickly. And today we have really very advanced military experience, not available for many military people in different countries. So this is something that generates the strategy of tomorrow's war. Is the situation the same for you? And coming back to what keeps you sane, today, probably like half an hour ago, I met my friend Ivana, and Ivana asked me how the soldiers respond and react to Donald Trump victory. And I thought that probably my soldiers do not even know about the case. And it's not because they are not interested in the international politics. The point is that there are several stages in somebody's life, in the life of a human person. When you go to the gym, and this is just the initial period, you are very highly motivated. Or when you go on a diet, please raise your hands who at least once went on a diet. So these 20 people will understand me pretty well. You are on a diet and you like everything. Those restrictions, how you feel, how you sleep, how you look like, and it seems to me that everything is great and ideal. But then the motivation expires. Who experienced it? So what do you have to do when the motivation is over? Discipline. Here comes the discipline. Later you go on and you are guided by the discipline. Motivation, in my case, motivation expired at the beginning of summer 2023.
Well, the progress that we had at the beginning just was stopped. That's true, and I was only motivated by discipline. I keep always saying that my motivation will always be there. Well, I've lost a lot of people during this war, and that's why I have motivation to wake up every day and to recall all those faces, all those people, to go to my friends' places at the cemetery and not in the bar, and that's my main motivation. But you're absolutely right. We have all got some physical capacity, but we have also got our limits and boundaries, and it's only discipline that enables us to move forward. I really like what you say. Every time when we speak about continuation of the war and mobilization, I'm asked, why do you need unmotivated people who come to your units? And I think that motivation is not a constant thing. It may disappear. I know a lot of people who were highly motivated in 2020 for 2022, and then they moved to some engineering battalions because their motivation was lost. I've got a guy who was actually mobilized on a force basis in Mukachevo, and I have to tell thank you, dear Mukachevo guys, for this man, because he was not motivated. He didn't want to fight, but now he's really the right guy for fighting. So this story shows us that motivation may come and go, and discipline is something that depends on us. And suppose we don't have any further motivation, we just need to use all the discipline that we have. And getting back to Donald Trump, well, I do understand why most of my guys did not comment the election in the US. Do you remember Sherlock Holmes? Do you remember Mr. Conan Doyle? There was a point in time when Dr. Watson told him about the heliocentric system and the Earth moving around the sun. And Sherlock Holmes told, okay, thank you for this information. I will try to forget this information as soon as possible. It's about not getting mad when you are in the army. You just get closed, shut away from the information that is not affecting your battalion and you at this point in time. I'm just now thinking how we could get some military devices for my battalion, and I'm not thinking who is going to become the new Secretary of State of the US, because I cannot influence the process of appointment of the Secretary of State, while I can affect the process of equipping my battalion with new military devices for us to reach our goals is something that I can really influence. And I think that the ability to go backwards from this helicopter view to the level of minor steps is exactly the precondition for not going mad. At least that's what I use to keep going. You can try this trick. Maybe it will be helpful for you. Yes, and let me just add that this is something that really matters. You affect whatever you can affect. You change whatever you can change, and whatever is really within your mandate. And as the squadron commander, I can tell you that I'm just like a manager of a small company which is autonomous and independent, and every movement of yours, every maneuver of yours really matters. It leads to success or failure, and each of you should have an area of responsibility you can really influence without scattering your efforts and attention on the election in the US.